For the inside scoop on where innovation is occurring, which companies are transforming the industry, and what jobs are offering the greatest opportunity, stay tuned for this week's episode where we are discussing innovative places, gigs, and digs. Nexius, accelerating network and business transformation.
Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board. telecomcareers.com.
Welcome back for another episode of Inside Telecom Careers. I'm your host, Karla Macias. Joining me today is Editorial Director Jeff Mucci and also Production Manager Joey Jackson from our very own RCR Wireless News. So Jeff, before we jump in today's show, why don't you tell us what's new this week?
Well, what's new this week is we got Joey Jackson here at the desk.
Thanks for having me. This is new for me. I haven't been on this show before.
And he's going to be telling us a bit about some of the new programs he's got coming up. But first, let's talk about some workforce news this week. I guess the biggest news I saw was 29,000 AT&T District 3 employees have voted to go on strike, but they continue working even though their contract expired on August 8th. Bloomberg reported that the CWA District 1 Verizon employees are continuing to work even though their agreement expired on August 1st. There's been a little mudslinging up in New York as well. Mm-hmm. You've got the CWA that's been running radio ads, lambasting Verizon for not building out their Fios network. Mm-hmm. And then we reported a couple weeks ago that Verizon actually created an app so its employees could record and document any abusive behavior by the CWA.
Yeah, we broke that story.
So interesting stuff going up on New York, and we'll talk a little bit more about New York in this episode. CenturyLink announced they were going to be laying off 1,000 employees. Wow. CenturyLink is Louisiana's largest publicly traded company. They just completed a 300,000 square foot corporate office that included an innovation center, and they're sticking to their story that they're going to add 800 new jobs in Louisiana as part of an incentive package that local authorities gave them to build that new facility. So overall, it's been a tough month for technology workforce. Yeah. You may recall last month Microsoft announced laying off 7,500 employees as part of that recent acquisition of Nokia's handset division. Qualcomm and Intel have recently announced layoffs. And then finally, Martha DeGrasse this week wrote an interesting story about how BroadSoft, Qualcomm, and Corning are some of the most exposed technology companies to the Chinese currency devaluation.
Not a lot of good news there, huh?
Well, I think it comes on the bright spot. I think the bigger story, if I could paint some better color on things, is that over the past couple of weeks on this show, we've been talking about the demand for fiber splicers, project managers, tower climbers. So what you're really seeing here is continued decline of the wireline business, continued rise of the wireless business, and so you just simply got a shifting of the workforce. And we've covered a number of programs that talk about apprenticeships and warriors in wireless, and so there's a lot of good going on, but we're really going through the seismic shift of wireline to wireless technologies, which requires retraining and regrooming a workforce.
Okay. Well, Jeff, you're the man behind RCR. Why don't you tell us why you launched Gigs, Digs, and Places?
Well, to clarify, RCR has been around since 1982, and we acquired RCR Wireless News in 2009. The previous owners, Crane Communications, closed it. Print revenues were declining. Digital wasn't growing as fast as they'd like, so we acquired the assets, hired the editorial team back, and now we've got this great facility. This is a global headquarters of RCR Wireless News here in town, and we've got a real solid team with Joey, Sean, Callie, and you joining us last month. So we've really got a nice team that can focus on producing compelling content, using multimedia in addition to our website and newsletter. So the whole concept behind Digs, Gigs, and Places is really part of our mission to connect our readers and our clients with the industry. And it's fun to talk about the big macro trends about technology, but at the end of the day, it's the people on the ground that make the companies run. And so the whole concept behind Gigs, Digs, and Places is there really three different things. So on the gig side, it's about the people who are making technology happen. So in some respects, Joey's, he's got a production manager. He represents the new generation of web TV. You came from production, broadcast TV. You're helping us create. So you guys are gigs in and of yourselves, and we'll be talking about that later. On the digs, it's about the companies. that are creating innovation. So as we go forward over the next 12 to 18 months, you guys are going to be going out in the field, meeting with companies who are making a difference. And so it's been reported that 100 people a day are moving to Austin, Texas, 3,000 people a month. Where are they going to work? So we're going to be digging into where are the hot spots of innovation, which leads you to the places story. Austin is a hotbed. There's some interesting things going on in San Francisco with all the over-the-top guys like Google and Facebook opening up these big warehouses and commuting employees down to the valley. Munich, Shanghai, Hong Kong, London. These are some of the markets we plan to visit over the next 12 to 18 months and really get inside the innovation, the companies, the people, and the types of jobs that are in the highest demand.
Okay. Well, digs, gigs, and places. It always gets me. But
yeah, those are supposed to be the catchy names.
saying those two together gets me every time. But with digs, gigs, and places, how can you tell us how each are different and how they relate to each other as well?
That's a good question. Again, it comes back to, you look at Austin, 100 people a day are moving here. So what's driving that? So we want to talk about places in the context of a city. It also may be in the context of a part of town. So for example, New York City, you've got this whole Brooklyn innovation era going on there. So we might do deep dives into a place that's just hot for innovation. And then within those places, dig into the companies and the people that are really driving change.
Okay. And thank you, Jeff, for that. So Joey, let's do a little get to know Joey.
Fun.
Tell us
I'm
a little
on the hot
bit.
seat now. Thank
yes,
you.
you are right in the middle. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to RCR Wireless.
Well, I came from local TV news. I was a multimedia journalist. Kind of cut my teeth there, really learned how to tell a story visually and learned that I really enjoyed it. But the grind of it every day was a little bit, it got me after 5 years of doing it. So I was looking for something new, and I happened to meet Jeff at a production studio that I was doing some other project at, and he was touring it. And, I got his card and I emailed him, and I was like, you got anything for me to do? And I've really had an opportunity to kind of be able to kind of do stories the way that I want to do them here, as opposed to like working in TV news, which you kind of have to do what they want you to do. So, I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to doing more of it.
Yeah, Joey it was an interesting story. We were looking for studio space back in third or fourth quarter last year, and I was going around Austin looking at different green screen locations and studio space, and I went to a green space south of town. And Joey, with I think your roommate or one of your friends, you were doing a segment for another web TV show, and I was like, that's the kind of guy we need. So he's had broadcast TV background, he had a journalistic background. He's a Duck, right? Yep. Oregon Duck. So we got SEC, we got Ducks, we got ACC. But he had a journalistic background, and he really shows a passion for storytelling. And if you had a chance to engage with Joey and you mentioned, hey, let's go out and do a story on Las Vegas. What makes Las Vegas tick? And I know you guys are going to, a little foreshadowing here, but his eyes light up, he gets animated and literally rushes out the door to go get a story. And then furiously, when he gets back on the editing side, he's really good at putting that story together.
Yeah, I really enjoy the editing part.
We're glad to have you on the team.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, speaking of being on the team, why don't you tell us some of the projects that you're involved with now, and maybe give us a sneak peek on any future
I think
RCR
you're hinting
projects?
at something.
I am.
So first of all, I've been working on multiple digs. I did Ericsson. I was in Dallas recently for Ericsson. Nokia. I did Nokia, and I just released National Instruments. But I think what you want to talk about is Cell Tower News, which is a new program that we're launching here pretty soon. I think August 20th is the date for that. And we'll basically be talking about the backbone of the wireless industry, the people that work on the towers, the people that buy the towers, and what it takes to run them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that the cell phone just works. And what we've tried to do at RCR Wireless is really go deep into the infrastructure that's required to make those phones work. And One of your frequent guests, I think, is going to be Jared Matula.
Yep. Yeah.
Jared joined us a couple years ago as his official job is content manager, and
he wears many hats.
Many hats, but he's a great writer. He actually on the side blogs for a music site about different bands and that sort of thing. But he really has connected with the tower climber community on Facebook, and so we want to really go deeper into the tower industry as you go from macro towers into small cell and HetNet. You know, who are the people behind and what are the stories behind getting that infrastructure built?
And we'll be talking to Brian Darr of Mosaic Solutions for talking about site acquisition for our first show. So stay tuned for that.
We're excited to have Brian on the show. Now, Joey, tell us, what's your favorite Diggs episode that you've done so far?
Well, I mean, I've enjoyed them all. Obviously, I've done AT&T Foundry, I've done Silicon Labs, CommScope, but I think that my favorite was Ericsson because I got to see their 5G test bed, which was kind of like on the cutting edge and brand new. So, if you want to take a look at that, let's show that clip.
Let's roll that.
You're in the Ericsson Experience Center in Plano, Texas, in the North American headquarters for Ericsson. This is one of 5 experience centers globally. Our goal is to show off how people use the networks and what might be coming in the near future. We are leading the transition through mobility in that network society as well as the back-end network.
Joey, great job on that segment. It looked really good.
Thank you.
So you talked about the Center of Excellence in that, I guess the Innovation Center.
Yeah, the
5G
Innovation Center. Yeah.
But I think what a lot of people don't know is that Ericsson employs over 18,000 people. And,
they're big. They're a big
Dallas.
company.
And it's on the north side, and I know you're going to be going back up there more often. Nokia has a facility in Dallas. You've got
Toured that
Ericsson,
one. Yep.
so you've toured that one. AT&T moved to corporate headquarters there, so we've got a lot of interesting things to do up there. The Metroplex Technology Business Council has a lot of great telecom companies involved. The Richardson, they call it the old Telecom Quarter. For you young guys, you may not remember it, but Dallas has always been known as the Richardson area was a telecom quarter. It's back when MCI used to be there. And so, but that whole area is transformed. Alcatel-Lucent's built a new facility up there, which is going to be interesting.
With Nokia.
So we'll see what happens up there, but that was a great job, Joey. Look for more digs to come.
Thank you.
Now let's jump into the places segment. And Jeff, why don't you tell us about what the places are?
Well, I guess 2 recent episodes that stand out in my mind was twofold. One, we went to New York a couple weeks ago and we covered some Verizon technology. Went to the Empire State Building. Last year, went to Stockholm and spent a week there. And when we went to Stockholm, we actually reached out to the Economic Development Group of Stockholm. They set up a bunch of meetings with Intel and IBM, and then we attended the Ericsson analyst event for a couple days. But we've got a clip on Ericsson, which will show on Stockholm in just a minute. But first, let's talk about New York City. And what was funny is before we went up to New York City, Jonathan Adelstein, who's the CEO of PCIA, had just attended a state wireless conference up there and said that New York City was the wireless envy of the world. So that I jumped on a plane, went up there and said, okay, let's find out. So we've got a New York City places segment, if we could run real quick.
If it's happened anywhere in the world, it's happened in New York City. This city has more people, more traffic, more congestion, more situations that challenge wireless infrastructure than any other city in the world. Companies like Verizon Wireless are leveraging all of the assets that they represent and have, and all of the technology from vendors like Alcatel-Lucent to provide the service that end users are coming to expect and rely upon. They're using small cells basically in 3
So Karla, what I really enjoyed is we got to go inside Verizon's base station hotel. And so what they're doing is they're building a whole bunch of neighborhood base station hotels that can serve in-building DAS, they can serve ODAS, they can also serve macro networks. So this is really the foundation for the HetNet concept. And we got to go inside with Alcatel-Lucent and Verizon. And if you want to see the whole segment, actually go to our YouTube channel or go to RCR TV and click on Places, and you'll see a couple segments on New York City.
Okay. Speaking of New York City, one of our editors, Sean Kinney, wrote a great story yesterday on Verizon expanding their cellular and Wi-Fi networks in the 279 subway. What can you tell
Actually,
us about
279 stations.
279
Yeah,
stations. Sorry about that.
So when you-
not familiar with New York.
That's
so.
okay. So while we were up in New York City, we actually, later in the afternoon, we went out with Solid and we toured the Empire State Building, and then we actually went out with Transit Wireless to a secret location in New York City where the head-end equipment for the Metro subway is in place. And then we went out to a metro station and had the guys from Solid and Transit tell us about the underground coverage, which is very complex. I mean, you're down underground. Wireless doesn't really go through rock very well, and so you've had to build these I guess, DAS systems underground, but they're being fed by these base station hotels, which was really interesting. And so yesterday, the announcement that Verizon has launched their own coverage of the 279 subway stations. That's pretty interesting news, but it all goes back to serving these DAS systems, in-building systems, and macro networks with these base station hotels that are connected with metro fiber networks.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Stockholm. What can you tell us about that segment?
Well, Stockholm, again, in the piece, we'll talk about how it's one of the most innovative cities in the world. And I went there to really learn more about Stockholm, what made it unique. Some of the things that really jumped out at me is, number one, I went to an underground data center that was actually used to film a James Bond episode.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool.
That is cool.
We went out to Intel and looked at their Internet of Things lab. We spent some time with Ericsson, went out to Volvo. But what was really interesting to me was Stockholm is the city-owned metro fiber network. And this goes back 20 years ago. The city of Stockholm recognized that they needed to enable broadband, so they actually built a private fiber network. And today, 100% or nearly 100% of the buildings have fiber, and over 90% of the residents in Stockholm have fiber. And the Stockholm basically leases that fiber or will sell dark fiber to the carriers. But the whole point being is that that really was the economic enabler that's driving a lot of innovation there. One of the other, I think, things that I didn't really know about was you had a lot of the gaming industry, Minecraft, which Microsoft bought for $8 billion, Spotify, and others. So there's a really hotbed of gaming companies, music companies, and then telecom companies there in Stockholm. But let's run that intro segment.
So we saw two other configurations, and these are even more common in terms of the deployment here in the city.
These are our low power radios, and we also have some high power radios. The good thing about the low power radios is that they have a smaller form factor compared to the high power radios. They take a lot less power, and we need a lot less components to build out the system. From these units, we pretty much just have our RF cable up, around, and into these head-end units. And then the head-end units go straight out to the field and feed to a remote unit that has a Omni antenna and providing service much closer to the customers than we would be able to do with traditional macro systems. In this room alone, it is all ODAS, but in this hub itself, we do have some.
So I think, Carl, I got ahead of myself there. I think we ran the we just ran the Metro Underground segment. Let's run the Stockholm segment now. Let's run that one, please.
Stockholm is one of the world's most connected cities and also home to both telecom pioneers dating back to 1876 and today's leading internet and gaming industry innovations. According to a recent Atomica report, Stockholm is the startup capital of Europe in terms of the city that has created the most billion-dollar software companies that have valued more than $1 billion since 2003. And this is second only to Silicon Valley. In addition, CNN, Wired, and Tech Europe have ranked Stockholm as one of the top markets globally for tech startups. More recently, a new wave of Stockholm entrepreneurs are changing the world of technology. For example, Daniel Ek, CEO of Spotify, Niklas Zennström, co-founder of Skype and Atomico, and also Marcus Notch Persson, who is game developer at Minecraft. My name is Sabine von Gafke, and I'm your host here today along with Jeff Mucci, who is CEO and Editorial Director of RCR Wireless. And please join us today as we go local and find out what makes Stockholm so special.
Great video, Jeff.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to ask this question, but where is Stockholm?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually in Sweden.
Oh, okay. Did not.
And so a
think
lot of
that.
those Nordic countries, they kind of, now I don't want anybody to take offense, but they do kind of lump together. And we've been to Helsinki in the past. We've been to Stockholm, and we look forward to covering some of those other. Been to Estonia a couple years ago, which was fun. So we look forward to covering some of those Nordic countries. I think with Nokia
Yeah, there's a lot of important companies
I
up
think
there.
that's going to be Helsinki and Finland is going to be a very interesting area for us to cover because of the long history of Nokia. You got some incredible engineers, and so with the downsizing of the handset division, you're going to see ramp up of, I think, some new creative things going on in Helsinki. Every year they hold a big innovation event called Slush. We covered last year. Claudia Baca covered, and we'll probably be covering it again later this year.
Okay. Well, now, last but not least, let's talk about gigs. Jeff, why is this segment important to you?
Well, you can't have a company without people, okay? And my personal experience over the last 30 years, I've been involved with starting 3 or 4 companies. I've been involved with restructuring 3 or 4 companies, and you just simply can't get from point A to point B without great people. And the biggest challenge is getting those people aligned around the corporate goals and objectives. And people are people. We all put our pants on the same way. We all drink coffee. We all drive to work. But it's the people that make the difference. And so even here at this company, okay, we bought RCR and it was closed. We had to hire some new people, Dan Meyer, Tracy Ford. And then we continued to build our team here. But at the end of the day, RCR is you guys. Right? The shows we're doing here, we're breaking ground. We're on the tip of the spear. We got arrows in our back. We're trying to forge the new digital media business. You ask about workforce news. Last week, the media industry lost $30 billion of value. Okay? That's a big change. So we're going through seismic shifts in media. We're going through seismic shift from wireline to wireless. In the wireless business, we're going from going to virtualization and network function virtualization. We're going to cloud technologies. So to me, we're in a transformative period, and mobile and wireless technology is probably the most important segment. IoT, over the top, 5G. So RCR is going to be there to cover it, but we're going to be talking about the people and the faces that really make it happen. And I guess as a kid growing up, I remember Sports Illustrated. I'd go to the back and it had faces in the crowd. And you know, as a teenager or a young kid, you look at these other kids who are doing this and that. And what we hope to do is really inspire people to learn more about the industry, to come into the industry. And we think gigs, digs, and places is an opportunity to do that.
Okay. Well, Joey, what is one gig segment that stands out most to you?
Well, I've done some fun ones. The tower climbing one was definitely a very interesting one. Those guys always have a lot of good stuff to say. I mean, they climb towers for a living. They're hundreds of feet in the air, but
definitely not afraid of heights. There.
I think the most important one that I've done is the one about the data scientists, because Harvard Business Journal called it the sexiest job of the 21st century. So, you know, I saw that and was like, this is important. People need to know what these guys actually do. So let's take a look at that.
Okay.
It's a constant stream of getting data, looking at data, shaping data, coming up with different approaches, being creative with approaches. What am I going to be looking at today? What kind of questions I'm planning to answer or trying to answer, or should I answer to get to the result? So we start for every problem that we do have a certain solution approach that we lay down before we start doing the analysis.
Thank you so much, Joey and Jeff, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
And if you have any suggestions for places, digs, or gigs, or an interesting career that you want to feature on Inside Telecom Careers, email me at kmacias@rcrwireless.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Inside Telecom Careers is a production of RCR TV News. To reach Jeff Mucci or to suggest a show topic for Inside Telecom Careers, you can reach him at jmucci@rcrwireless.com. For all telecom-related news and information, please visit rcrwireless.com. To connect with the industry's top talent, please visit telecomcareers.net.